Hello and welcome to my new video. This time I will summarize publications I have been collecting over the course of part month, focused on effects of climate change. I selected quite a number of publications, 6 in total. Nobody can claim there was not enough research on climate change. 4 of the publications mentioned here are looking at individual effects of climate change. They are studying things like crop yields, forest fires, or melting of glaciers on Greenland. One of these, studying waves of heat and drought in Europe, appears particularly interesting to me since it rather focuses on likelihood and severity of extreme events than on development of average values. Extreme events, as you might remember from 2018-2019 in Europe, can impact ecosystems and agriculture much more than shifts in average values. The highlight, however, is a collective effort of more than 200 scientists summarizing the importance and possible impact of tipping points when projecting future climatic changes. Finally, as part of a positive turnaround, I will shortly present a paper on pathways for economic transition away from fossil fuels. As always, I will not go too much into details of the publications mentioned here, this time in particular, since there are so many. And as always, you can find the citations in the comment section to this video. Everybody is talking about reducing carbon dioxide emissions. So what have you achieved? I adapted this graph from the publication by Jeff Tollefson, and you can see that there is a super slight reduction of emissions in Europe and the US. In spite of this, we are still emitting high amounts, and we will continue to do so if things don't accelerate. In addition, this graph has added the emissions of global aviation and shipping to the rest of the world, so our emissions are clearly underrepresented. There are some indications that emissions in China and India might start to decline in the future, but currently things look pretty bad. Now let's have a look at the studies addressing individual effects of climate change. What do authors predict? Ehsan Reza and colleagues looked at yields of important staple foods: wheat, maize, millet, sorghum, and rice. Heat and drought are the main factors reducing crop yields worldwide in the future, with stronger impacts in low when compared to high latitudes. Rising carbon dioxide basically is a positive factor for plant growth. C3 plants like wheat unfortunately can only benefit when not challenged by heat and drought. The studies reviewed by the authors predict declining yields of 7 to 23% in the most severe scenarios. Irrigation and nutrient management might partially alleviate problems, but applicability on a large scale is at least questionable. What about forest fires? Thomas Janssen and colleagues looked at extratropical forests and asked in the first step whether recent fires had been started by humans or by natural causes. It means mainly by lightning. Studying the distribution of burnt areas, they concluded that most, 77% of fires, had been started by lightning. Since lightning strikes are predicted to increase under conditions of climate change, so will forest fires, giving rise to additional carbon dioxide emissions. A study by L.J. LaRocca and colleagues addressed ice losses from Greenland's peripheral glaciers in the past 100 years by studying aerial pictures and satellite data from more than 1,000 glaciers. Their main result: within the last 2 decades, melting accelerated by a factor of 2 when compared to the time period before. Last not least, a study on the probability of extreme heat waves in Europe. Laura Serraras Gutierrez and colleagues were not looking at the most likely increase in average temperatures in the next 80 years, they rather looked at extreme events. How likely are years of extreme heat and drought, like the ones experienced in 2018-2019, in the future? Such years will shape our future much more than normal years. They will result in severe agricultural and ecological damage as well as in increased mortality, as already experienced. Therefore, it is important to study the likelihood of such extreme events in particular. Laura Suarez Gutierrez and colleagues come to the conclusion that by 2050, the likelihood of 2 successive years of heat and drought will exceed 10%, and that we also might experience whole decades of heat or drought stress. In the introduction, I mentioned a large collective effort by more than 200 scientists on the importance of tipping points in climate change. In the comment section, there is a link to a respective website and to a text from Jeff Tollefson in Nature commenting this effort. What are tipping points? Most of you probably know these buckets hanging up high in modern water parks. They are slowly filling up with water, and at some point, difficult to predict, they will tilt and the water will pour down. We often see climate change as a slow, almost cozy process. Carbon dioxide is building up in the atmosphere, and so are the effects, slowly, gradually. It is becoming a few degrees warmer, it is raining a bit more or less, nothing to worry about. In reality, things may change suddenly. When stress is exceeding the limits of an ecological system, the system will eventually collapse and it will be either impossible or very difficult to ever rebuild. Examples? Here are only the most prominent candidates for imminent change to the worse. Coral reefs, example given on the Australian east coast, are the first candidates. Immensely rich and beautiful, true marvels of nature, but very vulnerable to ocean heat waves. Even in its current early stage, climate change might soon result in extinction of these marvels. Ice sheets from Greenland and West Antarctica are next. When they melt, the areas will absorb more sunlight, fueling their own meltdown, a process working like an avalanche. Further candidates are the northern forests and the Amazon rainforest, which may start tipping once temperatures have increased only a bit from where we currently stay. I'm pretty sure we will cross these tipping points affecting the livelihood of many millions of people. However, this is not the time of defeatism. The next decade will decide about how much we are going to lose and how much we are going to save. My last paper from Sohail Sahey and colleagues in this video is looking at possible pathways of transitions from a fossil fuel-based economy to an economy based on renewable energy. Transition, even fast transition, is possible, and it will take us as customers and citizens, as scientists, teachers, or anything else, to make things tilt.